Welcome back to the Evolution of Dental podcast, brought to you by Evolution Dental Science, where we explore the stories of the people and the technology changing the world of dentistry. Today's guest is an iTero guru, an expert in the field of the developing technology surrounding imaging, Dr. Josh Austin. Welcome. How are you today?
I don't know if I'd use any of those words. I think that the thing I'm most an expert in is obscure sports references from the 80s and 90s. I think that's probably where my expertise lies. But I appreciate the very kind words. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy to have you here.
Happy
So,
to be here.
what got you started on this journey with sports trivia and iTero?
Well, so sports trivia starts by just I grew up in a time period that most listeners of this show probably won't have ever heard of called the 1980s. And in the 1980s, we didn't have this thing called the internet. And so you used to have to fill your time with things like reading sports magazines, watching like the one game a week on TV, reading the back of baseball cards, things like that. And so that's where all that esoteric knowledge comes from. Forget anything about teeth. I forget that stuff immediately, but I do remember that Chris Sabo hit 264 for the Cincinnati Reds in 1989. So important information to know for sure. I just made that number up, by the way. If it's right, it's just pure luck.
So, how'd you get started with iTero, though?
Yeah. So I tell that's a much more interesting story. So I've been in the digital game in it's since like 2008, and it started with not even the iTero scanner. It started with a scanner you might remember, and some listeners might remember if they're OGs in digital, called the 3M True Definition Scanner
You had a 3M tree with the powder spray
with the
and
powder spray and all of this,
yeah,
and
there
it
you
was
go.
monochrome. It would take 8 minutes to scan a quadrant, and but it all started because I just didn't like the one of the things I struggled with in dental school was taking master impressions. Like it just was always a struggle for me. And so I was like, there has to be a better way. And of course, I saw early on, we had like the Cadent iTero, the foot pedal iTero that first came out, and it was like producing this milled model versus the TrueDef, which produced this SLA model, stereolithography model. And I was just like, oh, like reading the technologies, like SLA is more accurate than the milled model. And that's when we were like scanning and making a model off of it, and then just making like a traditional crown off of a model, just like it was stone, except we had created it digitally. And so I had that scanner for a while, and you see immediately like the better fit of restorations, the better fit of aligners when you're able to actually get a full arch scan. But it was just cumbersome, right? It was just wonky. And eventually the TrueDef, they stopped developing that scanner. They never did anything additionally to it. So it's like at some point I was like, I need to find something different. So we tried everything else out, and we tried iTero. And my team all thought the iTero was the easiest to scan with, and so that's what we got. And that's when we started going, and it was just like everyone else uses an iTero. We scan it for crowns and bridges and Invisalign cases, and that was it. But there was one day in my office, this was like 2017. I had a lady in, she's an older lady, and she didn't bring her hearing aids that day, and she had broken like 14 or 15 or had a crack or something like that. And I was trying to explain to her that she was going to need a crown, and she just couldn't hear me. And so I was like, I don't know what else to do. So like we took a intraoral camera, and you couldn't like it the intraoral camera was fogging up, and it like had spit bubbles on it. It's like didn't get a very good picture. So I told my hygienist, scan her with the iTero. Let me show her on the iTero. And it was like, despite her not being able to hear anything, she could see immediately on the iTero. And it kind of gave me this idea to start scanning everybody. And so in 2017, we started scanning every patient that came in the door with iTero. And it's still what we do today. Everyone who walks in gets a scan. And that's the basis of our patient communication and our new patient experience in the office. It starts with an iTero scan. Everything starts there. And then we go off from there and use all the other tools to try to talk about treatment.
So you say you're using it as much as a tool to convey a visual as anything else, then to communicate with the patients, like seeing is believing.
It's far more valuable for me for that than it is as a replacement for polyvinyl siloxane impression material. I mean, that's what it does, is it generates more dentistry in the practice. And it's certainly big cases and aesthetic cases and full mouths and implants and all that high value stuff, but also just stuff like class twos and caries and nine guards and Essex retainers and all of that. I mean, it just generates more dentistry. Does it take an extra 2 minutes to do a scan? Yeah. Does it cost me a sleeve tip? Yeah, for sure. But as we like to say in the mollusk coaching world, we don't step over dollars to pick up cents. We don't step over dollars to pick up pennies. And so I'm not concerned about the 2 minutes of time or the $2 scanning sleeve because it just produces so much more dentistry. When patients can see what we see, they say yes to treatment. That's all it is. And photos are fine. Photos are good. But at the end of the day, a photo is a static two-dimensional image with no context to it versus like the richness of a 3D scan, especially today with the beauty of what intraoral scanners do, whether it be the iTero or the Trios or the Medit i900 or any of them. They all produce these really photorealistic scans, and patients look at it, they see, they understand. And when they see and they understand, they say yes to treatment. So that to me is like, that's the way to use a scanner. It's far more valuable for that than it is for, instead of squirting goo or endo prep.
Yeah, that sounds much more relatable. How else has incorporating the scanner into your practice changed? Like, what are some things you did before that you no longer do? Or what are some things you do now that you didn't do before because you scan everybody?
Yeah. So the first thing when you start scanning patients and talking to patients about it, like in the hygiene room, I would say, like either at their recall or the new patient exam, wherever, is you have to talk less. Like I have to do less explaining when they can see, right? If a picture's worth a thousand words, like how many words is a scan worth? It's like a million, right? It also makes my exam time go down because again, I'm not talking as much, right? Dentists are great. Dentists are great at talking in circles and talking patients out of treatment. I see it all the time. And so that's one of the workflow that changes. But then once you have the scan, what we're finding is all these scanner companies, it doesn't matter who it is, they're all building these software tools onto the scanners that have nothing to do with creating a restoration. They have everything to do with communication, right? So whether it be caries detection technology, there's like 5 scanners in the market now that have caries detection. Whether it be what I call change monitoring, the ability to take a scan on one day and take a scan a year later and show what's changed. So to observe for things like wear and recession and teeth that are crowding or spacing. And then the ability to do outcome simulation, right? The ability to take a patient, take a scan, and then show them what it would look like if they were to do aesthetics, what it would look like if they were to do orthodontics, what it would look like if they did both, right? So using all those different tools just like quickly and easily at a couple of fingertips can make a difference about where a conversation goes and give a patient, ideas about what is going on in their mouth, what can be addressed, what's changing in their mouth, and then what is possible, right? That's kind of the biggest thing. So I think just once you have the scan, once you have that STL data, there's so much stuff you can do with it. And they're giving us more and more tools, the scanner companies, and they're really putting a lot of development into this in order to make us realize that these scanners are not for making crowns. Yes, they make crowns. Yes, they can scan for a bridge or an implant. No problem. But it's so much more than that.
Do you have any, so much more than that. Do you have any examples you can think of like, because you're a big believer in, as I understand, minimally invasive dentistry. Do you have any examples of how that's influenced or cases that you've used that to transform somebody's cosmetic experience?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, minimally invasive is great, right? Like I always use the idea that like while there is a terminology of something called the no prep veneer, the cases that are no prep are like so small, right? There's very few of those people. But if we use the treatment tools that we have, we can make cases more minimally invasive. And we can move to a position where maybe we have to prep less off of a tooth. And so we can use ortho in a lot of those cases. And so I can use a simulation to show somebody where their bite is hitting and
Uh,
like, hey, you're edge to edge right here. If you want to do some repair of those edges and correct that asymmetry from the wear that you have, we've got to get some space from somewhere. If I don't, I have to prep a bunch of your tooth away and I can show them that kind of modeling. And then I can show them, hey, after 8 months of alignment, look where your teeth are now. Now we can just add to your teeth, right? By using these simulators that are on the scanners now. And so those types of situations are situations that come up all the time. And I always say this, like if a patient will grant me the gift of patience, I can move them to a area where we have to remove less of their enamel, right? Am I like,
you mean literally move them, right? Like
yes,
using
absolutely.
orthodontic. Yeah, using orthodontic.
Orthodontically move them, right? And I'm the first to say, like, I like prepping teeth. You know what I mean? I love prepping teeth. I love the smell of enamel as it flies, through the operatory off my handpiece. But there's a time and a place for it, right? When we have ugly enamel, when we have discolored enamel, when we have old restorations, when we have decay. But if I have pretty teeth, you know, but they have some unevenness, they have some asymmetry, whatever, we can do some ortho first. And we can make the outcome better. And one case where we really talked about it was a case that was just published in the Journal of Cosmetic Dentistry in November of last year. A case where we had some spacing, uneven incisal edges, altered passive eruption. And so we did a combination of orthodontics with Invisalign. We did some crown lengthening, and then we did 10 no prep veneers. And it actually ended up winning the AACD Case of the Year last year.
Wow.
And it was, I felt so bad because it won the Case of the Year for like crown lengthening and veneers. But like I didn't really do any, I didn't pick up my handpiece. Like they were literally no prep veneers. So it was like, actually the award doesn't go to me. The award goes to my lab tech who made the veneers. All I did was glue them on, so, but it was about the moving teeth into a position first so that we could be no prep, because he would have never been no prep in the position he was at before.
That's beautiful. Wow, case of the year. That's pretty
I
impressive.
mean,
It just to have, I mean, just to have the vision to bring it there in the first place, because that's the big difference, as you were saying, is the difference between cutting unnecessarily teeth that are already beautiful, versus just changing the position so you can set them up for success a little better.
well, and the digital tools are what's giving us the ability, right? Like you guys are obviously like huge exocad proponents, and part of your business is exocad licensing and all that kind of stuff. And exocad gives us tools to be able to analyze, like, hey, where are we at now? What would thickness of ceramic be, all that kind of stuff. And now those tools from exocad that help us with that are being incorporated into another product that Align Technology sells called Invisalign Smile Architect. And so there's tools from exocad in that, so I can kind of plan the orthodontic case with a vision of like at the end, where are, what's how much reduction, how much is addition, all that kind of stuff. So it's the digital tools that give us the ability to visualize this versus the old days of like having to sit at a lab with a model and a pot of wax, and having to manually wax all this stuff up and just see where you got, right? Versus now, like you can just do it all with a mouse before you ever pick up a handpiece. And that's the difference. It's just like using all those tools. That's why what you guys do with your laboratory and your sort of your digital part of your business is so great, because it gives dentists those tools. And my wife I practice with my wife. We're a customer. We bought exocad from Evolve, and she works up cases all the time in exocad for me. And one of the great things that I think you guys do, which I really love, and this isn't supposed to be a commercial for you guys, just FYI, but like she can hop on a Zoom call, she can schedule a Zoom call with a designer anytime. That all kind of came with the license of the exocad. So it's just those tools, right? The more digital tools we have, the more we can play in these games of like, all right, where does the tooth need to be in order for me to get this facially driven outcome, right? And the more tools we have, the easier all that's going to get, and the faster and more repeatable it's going to become in all of our practices.
Using the tools to plan out the cases before you even touch any of the teeth.
Exactly, that's the point. That's the great thing. Now, do you have to know the ortho and how you're going to move the teeth that way? Yeah, for sure, for sure. But I know a couple guys that can help you learn how to do that.
How's that, first off, who can help you learn how to do that?
I mean, I'm biased
Way.
because I teach in a ecosystem named Molus Coaching, and so Molus Coaching is the number one leading platform for GP education on Invisalign clear aligners in the world. It's named after a guy, Ryan Molus, who's the world's leading GP provider for Invisalign. And it's like Spear Education. It's a library of it's a website with a library of videos. We have live events too, but you go through all the videos and you really from soup to nuts of the idea of aligners in your practice, all the way through how to execute ClinChecks, how to use elastics, how to use IPR and attachments. And I mean, it's literally everything of how to learn clear aligners in your practice. And it all just comes from the need of like, none of us were taught ortho very well in dental school. We were taught that there is something called orthodontics, but you don't need to worry your pretty little head about it. Send it to an orthodontist. And so you've got to learn the ortho from somewhere. And so having a somebody to teach you that specifically for clear aligners, I think is important. Are there other great Invisalign educators out there? Yes, for sure. David Galler's great. Christina Blocker's great. Corey Analyc's great. A lot of great people.
And so with working with the coaching, how has that influenced the way you approach dentistry? Has it changed any of the way you look at things or how you communicate with patients?
So when I started teaching for Invisalign, I was teaching just iTero stuff, how to get great scans for crowns, bridges, implants, restorative stuff. I had no interest in Invisalign. I did 0 Invisalign cases. And I would say, you need ortho, and then I'd send them somewhere else. And a good portion of those people just never go because it's another place. And so at some point I realized I need to learn some of this stuff. And that's where the whole thing started. And within a short period of time of consuming as much of the clinical education about clear aligners as I could find, I found myself much more confident in it, much more willing to take on cases, which meant I was talking about it more in the practice. And it was something that I was seeing all the time, like where ortho could help me out. And I would argue it's about 3/4 of my restorative cases could benefit from some orthodontic alignment. So we talk about it a lot. And where energy flows, momentum grows, right? And so that started growing the practice. And now orthodontics is like 40% of my practice, which would have been unheard of. And as I started doing more, as I learned more, I started doing more, which meant I had more cases and could help other dentists. And really, when I joined Moelis coaching the faculty, everything was about my role on that team is all talking about how can you use ortho to improve your restorative dentistry. And so, Smile Architect is a tool that we use a lot for that, and that's kind of my role. So I'm sort of like, Steve Kerr on the 1990s Chicago Bulls. I'm not gonna get any rebounds, but you can bring me in to shoot some threes, and that's how I kind of have one job on the team. And so, I've been able to kinda just focus on that. But what it's allowed me to do is become much more confident in my patients who just need orthodontics and treating those cases in-house. Now we do class 2s, we do class 3s. I'll use elastics. We do teens now. We do palatal expansion. It just sort of starts from there. And so what you start seeing is, dentists are really great. We're really great at diagnosing caries and perio because we have tools to diagnose those things and we have tools to treat them, right? If someone comes in with caries, we have something to fix it, and it generates revenue for the practice, which is good. But malocclusion is the one disease that most dentists are totally fine with saying, looks good, see you in 6 months. And the reason I know this is because most dentists don't have articulating paper on their exam kits. They have Mirror and Explorer and radiographs and whatever, but they're not looking at bite. They ask the patient to bite down, but they're not looking at malocclusion. When you start scanning everybody, now you can start visualizing malocclusion. And when you have a tool to treat malocclusion, you can begin taking malocclusion as seriously in your practice as you would do caries and perio. And what you find is that your patients are treated better. You're treating a disease that is much more prevalent now than caries and perio. And it is something that I think is great for the patient and is great for the practice. And many dentists sleep on malocclusion because we don't have tools to treat it. And that's because dental schools don't teach ortho. And so you didn't have the ability to treat it, referring it out. And that's always kind of a barrier. So what it does is when you start becoming comfortable adding this to your practice, your patients are going to be treated better because of it. And they're going to be treated more comprehensively. And I think that's the goal.
It's treated more comprehensively, absolutely, because it sounds like, I mean, if you're treating 40% of your patients now with orthodontic work, that means that, to me anyway, that tells me that that was there all along, and
It's
that
all
it's
yeah, it's always been there.
true for you, then it's probably true for others. And it sounds like it's a pretty approachable thing that you can get into with the modern tools.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you can visualize occlusion with somebody after a scan, you just hit the occlusogram button and it shows them where they're hitting. What you're gonna start seeing is a lot of people hit on 2 teeth in their mouth. A lot of people have big red interferences on 1 tooth and the rest of the teeth don't touch, but they are nailing their front teeth or they're hitting on their incisal edges. And now that you can demonstrate that to a patient and show them where they're hitting and where their occlusion is, now you're stimulating that conversation, you're getting a patient interested in treatment, and then the energy begins to flow from there.
Have you ever had patients that looked at that and were still resistant to treatment or hesitant on it? And
For
if you did,
sure.
how do you overcome that?
Absolutely. Patients say no all the time. say no all the time. And you got to be good at hearing no as a dentist, right? I went to college in the 1990s, and this before there were dating apps. So you used to have to like go actually talk to women at a bar or whatever at a party. So I'm really good at hearing no because I used to hear it every night when I was in college. I'm good at hearing no. No today doesn't mean no forever. No today means no today. But it doesn't mean we don't inform people of what their diseases are. It doesn't mean we don't tell people what their oral condition is and what we see. And I get it. Like ortho doesn't fit in everyone's lives right now. The same way a full mouth rehab doesn't fit in everyone's life. The same way an all on four doesn't fit in everyone's life. Like there's could be a time in the future that is right for that patient. So if the time's not now, fine. We'll wait with you. We'll clean your teeth. We'll make sure you don't have caries. We'll make sure you don't have perio. But we're going to talk about it every time. And I understand that not everyone has the means to do it right now. You have no idea how to of a 42-year-old mother in. She's got some wear. She's got some recession. Her teeth are wearing down. Her teeth are thinning. But like, I get it. She's got a 14-year-old who just started ortho. She's got a 16-year-old that just finished ortho. We got college coming up in a year and a half. Like, I like, you just have to be okay with the fact that not everyone is going to say, yes, let's start today. And that's fine. That's totally fine. It's just it's part of the deal. And what I would like to do is make patients understand that they have an issue. I want to inform them of that issue. What they choose to do with that information is theirs. Right? You get to make the decision. But when it does fit in their life, we're here for them. We're here. And that happens a lot. Most of the patients I do comprehensive dentistry on, they don't walk into my office with money falling out of their pockets, and asking for the treatment. They're people that have been in my practice for years, and we've talked to them about it 10 times. And for whatever reason, the day that they say yes, that was their day. I don't know why. Maybe their aunt just died and they inherited 50 grand. Maybe they just got a big bonus at work. Maybe they're finally got their kids off their payroll. I don't know. But you have to be okay understanding that not everyone's going to jump right in on this. And you just have to help patients along, tell them what you see, tell them what you know, but don't judge them for not making the decision that you would make. I got told by a neurosurgeon that I need 2 jaw surgery, that I need maxillary mandibular advancement. And, like, I don't know, would you say yes to that right away? Like, I've been thinking about it for like 2 years. Could I say yes at some point? Yeah, maybe. But like, I'm not going to just say like, oh yeah, I need both my jaws operated on and under general anesthesia in an operating room. When can I say yeah? When can we start? Like, there's not always going to be that super clean yes. And that's fine. That's what dentistry is. You build relationships over time, and that's what keeps a dental practice going. Is you talk to patients about it, you help them through as they break teeth. Always keeping them informed, but letting them know that there's their decision is theirs, but we're here to help them. And at some point, most of these patients will get to a point where it's their time, and then you take care of the case then. So yeah, you're not going to get a yes from everybody right away, and that's fine. If you did, you wouldn't have the time to do anything. You'd be only doing, these big cases, 80 hours a week. And then you'd be complaining about that. So, it's a privilege to be a long-term provider for a patient. And this is kind of what happens over time is that you get to treat patients through their life.
Treat them through their life. They don't always say yes, but at least you get to keep them informed so it's their decision to make.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what our role is, right? You inform them and let them make the decision that's best for them on that particular day.
As I understand, you also have done some lectures with, Jennifer Bell, is that right? And
Yeah,
how's that collaboration been?
JB is one of my favorites. So Jen and I teach a course together along with Carla Soto and Matt Hicks called CDI, Comprehensive Dentistry with Invisalign. And it's a 2-day course. We're really talking about how do you use Invisalign aligners in a comprehensive treatment plan. Where does that fit when you're restoring teeth and moving teeth to positions of minimal prep? How do you set up your clinch checks? How do you talk about it with patients, et cetera, et cetera? And Jen is one of my favorite people in the world because her and I are both pragmatists. Like, we both are the first to admit that, like, I'm not Michael Appa. I'm not prepping $5,000 veneers on influencers and Hollywood actresses all day. I do class 2 composites. I do single crowns on number 18. I have crowns that break. I have, restorations that get recurring decay. I'm a regular dentist, but I have this part of my practice that's become that because of the tools that we have, and here's how we use them. And so I love working with Jen. She's great. We give each other a hard time because for many years, I was like the Invisalign guy that didn't do much Invisalign, right? And so I was like a gold level provider, which is kind of lower down. It sounds great, but it's lower down on the totem pole. And this past year, we hit platinum for our practice in Invisalign. And Jen texted me, and she's like, she's mad at me because now she's the only one on the stage that's like a lowly gold level provider, and everyone else is platinum and above. And so she was mad that I made the jump to platinum. But I was like, hey, you got to join Molus, and then you can get to platinum too. So I love her. She's amazing. We're both doing a presentation this year at the American Academy of Restorative Dentistry. Have you ever heard of the AARD meeting?
Yeah, yeah. But for those who haven't, please.
Yeah, it's in Chicago. It's the same weekend as Chicago Midwinter, and it's been around for like 100 years. And there's only 165 living members. So for someone to be invited to join the organization, someone has to die or retire. And so in order to join, you have to attend as a guest a certain number of times. You have to present, and then you have to go through this whole like nomination process. I mean, it's probably easier to be appointed as like Secretary of State than it is to get into this organization. And both of us are presenting what they call a projected clinic, which is an 18-minute presentation at this year's AARD. And so we were both kind of going through this stress together of building this 18-minute presentation because it has to be 18 minutes. If you go 30 seconds over, they will literally turn your microphone off and push you off stage. So it's got to be a tight 18 minutes. It has to have a certain
Wow.
number of literature citations. It has to show dentistry. It has to have all these like specifications. And so it's an interesting process to go through with Jen. So she's my girl.
That's it. That is, I had no idea it was so exclusive and specific.
It's
18
it's
minutes,
insane.
not 17, not 19.
Not 17. I mean, if you finish a little early, they're fine with it. They just definitely don't want you going 19. Like that is for sure. I think that Diana Tadros did one last year and she did so good. And she did a lot of her stuff from like the drip course. And so all the exocad design stuff, taking 3 patients, doing like mock-up smiles and then getting them to say yes to dentistry from that, then doing the dentistry and all that. Diana was so great last year. And her presentation's pretty I would say progressive is the word I would use. It's a lot of video. There's some music and stuff like that. So I wasn't 100% sure how these 78-year-old prosthodontists would enjoy like her drip style.
She's
And
very new
they,
age.
they they seem to love it. They seem to love it. She did a great job. So I'm just hoping I can be as good as Diana was last year.
I'm sure you'll do great. And so you've got some upcoming classes, you said, as well with Dr. Carlos Soto.
Yeah, so it's coming up in August of this year, and it's a course that we're doing through Mullis Coaching, and it's called Fusion. And it's a lot of the same ideas that come from comprehensive dentistry with Invisalign, but it's the next step. So it gets really into our ortho setups for our pre-restorative cases, um, prep design, provisionalization, 3D printing of provisionals, some design stuff, laboratory communication, occlusion. That's my role is to teach occlusion in this course, and it's like I have to boil occlusion down to 1 hour, which I don't know how I'm going to do that. So I've got to figure all that out. And then really we're going to spend a good couple hours on how each of us do consults because each of us do consults differently. And I frequently say this, it doesn't matter how good you are at prepping teeth. If no one ever says yes to a crown, what does it matter how good your preps are? It doesn't matter how good you are in Invisalign or at ortho. If no one says yes, what does it matter? Like you could prep veneers like Mike Lapa, and if no one ever says yes, it doesn't matter.
What is your approach to getting them to say yes? If you could share.
Absolutely. So it's using the tools of the scanner that we have now and relying on simulations. And so in the iTero world, it's called Invisalign Outcome Simulator Pro. So what we can do is we do a scan and then we can take a photo with an iPhone, very easy, wide smile photo. And then we can quickly within 2 or 3 minutes show them what their teeth would look like in a 3D model mode with either ortho or ortho and restorative dentistry. And we can also do a in-face visualization. So basically show them that photo of themselves, what they would look like if they just aligned their teeth or if they aligned and restored their teeth. Um, And now we have the ability to take a short video, a 30-second video or so, and we can show them in the video what they would look like of them talking, laughing, smiling, if they did alignment or if they did alignment and restorative dentistry. And when we go through that path, and I have a pattern I go through, a sort of road that I take them on, and then I unveil to them this photo of themselves, what they look like. And then we go to the video in this moving dynamic image. Um, it gets people interested, and that's it. So, I mean, if I just sat there and used words to talk to somebody about aligning teeth and restoring them, you know what, I bet we'd get 5% case acceptance rate. But when we do all of this visualization, um, if we include a year after, for case acceptance, our case acceptance rate jumps up by like 35%. So it's a pretty spectacularly moving thing.
So it sounds like you're using the tools to tell a video kind of story to the patient to show
Exactly.
them where this
Yeah.
can go. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And then the nice thing is after I go over all this, and we're sitting in my consult room now where I do that, where I go over, I have a big TV on the screen. We go over all that stuff. So somebody comes in for a cleaning. Now I'm talking to them about Invisalign and veneers. They're going to go home and need to talk about this with their spouse, their partner, their wife, their husband, whoever. So you got to send them home with something. Car dealerships do this, right? If you go test drive a car and you don't buy it that day, they give you this really nice like folder with all the information about the car and the financing terms and all this kind of stuff, right? So we now have a deal where we can share with them what's called a scan report, which has a bunch of still images from the scan and from the simulations with a QR code. So they take their phone, hold it over the QR code, it loads up on their phone. That way they can take it home and show their wife or their husband or their side piece from the Coldplay concert, whoever they want to show, and no judgment from me. And now we can share this video with them via text. And so we text them the video, we send them this report in the QR code. And so they can take it home and have a discussion. Right. And so I think a lot of times we, as dentists, first off, we're really bad about overwhelming patient like this big long treatment plan from Dentrix or Open Dental or whatever that has 10,000 ADA codes on it, D4381, D2692, whatever, and then this technical description about what it is, and the fee and whatever. And it, especially for a comprehensive case where you're doing ortho and crown lengthening and veneers and this, it's only 3 pages long. You give them, I mean, that's like giving somebody like the scientific specifications of an engine when they're trying to buy a car. Like, no, Mercedes-Benz doesn't do that. They give you a sheet of like a really great picture of the car and then like the features that come on it in plain English and then the price. That's it, right? And so I think dentists are really good at complicating it. So what we try to do is we try to bundle stuff together. So my favorite procedure to do is Invisalign and 4 veneers. It's my favorite procedure to do because it's pretty easy. Do the Invisalign, the veneer procedure, like I can prep 4 veneers and scan and photograph and provisionalize them in under 2 hours. Seating 4 veneers is easy, much easier than 10 or 12. And when we give a treatment plan to somebody, it doesn't say like number 7. I don't even know what a veneer code is. 2781, whatever it is. Number 8, 27. It doesn't have any of that. It just says alignment, X number of dollars, veneers, X number of dollars. It's 2 lines. That's it. And it's all bundled together.
Just
And it's like,
bottom line.
bottom line, stop overcomplicating it. Make it easy. Just bundle it all together. Make it all one fee. Figure out what your fee is for that kind of case, for the case you want to do. And then bundle it together and make it easy. So when you give somebody a treatment plan, it is easy for them to read, digest, take home, and know what they're getting.
Give them one target to aim at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The number of times that I used to give people a treatment plan that had like core buildup with pins, tooth number 3, core buildup with pins, tooth number 4, core buildup with pins, tooth number 5 for all 28 teeth. And then the restorations on each one and this and that. And it was just like, it was a mess. I mean, it literally is like giving technical specifications to someone who's buying a car. Like they don't need it. They want to know what color it is. Does it have tinted windows? Does it have power steering? That's it. We're ready. Let's go. Let's go. Make it easy.
That seems like really good advice. Again, just make it very digestible, bring it down to a bottom
Yeah.
line, on target.
Absolutely.
They're looking to pay the price anyway, right? So why
Right.
not just boil it down to here's your target, here's what you have to budget for. not split it up into a dozen different little subtotals that are all going to be incorporated into the same at the end anyway. And I really
Right,
like
and make
that.
it seem like we're nickel and diming them, right? Like, and it's just it's above their head, they get overwhelmed, and when they get overwhelmed, the human tendency is to just not make a decision, to just push it down the road. Like, "I don't have mental space for this now. Let's think about this another
I'll
day."
worry about that
And then the
later.
other day doesn't come.
Yeah, and then tomorrow never it is always the day after, the day after, the day after,
Yeah,
and next thing you
there's
know,
always something the
it's
next
gotten
day that
so much worse in the time in between, and meanwhile, they're coming back and you're taking additional scans and monitoring the progress and saying, "Hey, this is, continuing to get worse." Yeah, but it's continuing to add up, and I just can't think about that right now.
that's exactly right. There's so much else going on, make it easy. This is how much it's gonna cost to take care of you. It includes alignment, it includes the restoration of your teeth, and everything you need along the way. Make it easy.
Make it easy, bottom line, and keep them in communication as you said before, let it be their decision, but keep them informed.
Yep, that's it.
Speaking of informed, there's a new technology with iTero coming out that, I was not really aware of until very recently called, near infrared, something like that, NIRI?
Yeah, so we've had NIRI for a few years on the scanner, and what NIRI does is it caries detection technology. So as one of the cameras in the iTero one now, basically transilluminates teeth with infrared light, and what we find is teeth with caries, the carious lesion will absorb more light, more infrared than hard sound tooth structure, which bounces more off, and so you can actually see in a little window on the scanner these little like white spots. It's really good at detecting interproximal caries. It's like class twos, especially incipient ones that sometimes are too small to show up on wings. You can see this like white spot in the marginal ridge. So it's really great at tracking decay. We've got pretty good data on it. A multi-site, multi-nation study of around 6,000 patients that shows that it has the same sensitivity and specificity as perfect bite wings. The problem with bite wings, which are great, but bite wings oftentimes you have overlap in the contacts. If the sensor and the X-ray head aren't positioned just perfectly, and with intraoral scans, you really don't have that. So it's a great adjunct to bite wings. We never tell anybody not to take radiographs when you need them, but it doesn't emit any ionizing radiation, so it's safe for like pregnant patients. It's a great way to keep abreast of any caries that could be happening on a patient that you're not going to take radiographs on. And it's great for seeing more than what a radiograph can show you. There's the Trios family of scanners has fluorescence technology, and I think they're 4, 5, and 6. The Trios 4, 5, and 6. And so it's using a same sort of idea, just a different technology where it sort of uses fluorescent light on the teeth. The areas with caries absorb more of that fluorescent light, so they appear darker on this view, on this filter, on the scan. But that tells us this goes back to what we started talking about at the beginning, which was like, why would they put caries detection tools if they wanted you to buy a scanner and use it just to scan crowns? Like, I don't need caries detection when I'm scanning a crown. I remove the caries. That's why we're doing the crown. I'm scanning the crown so the lab can make me a restoration for it. But if they're putting caries detection tools in, they're telling you where they want you to use the scanner, and it's not in restorative dentistry. It's on the new patient experience, the recall patient experience. It's informing and educating patients so they say yes to treatment. That's really what it's about, and that's where it comes from.
It's looking further down the road to see what's coming.
All these tools, outcome simulation, change monitoring, caries detection. This is all, what it basically makes it is that your intraoral scanner is the digital hub of your practice. And so you end up collecting this massive data on all your patients, which is really, really nice to have around, um, for all kinds of different reasons. I've had patients where somebody fell down and broke their front teeth. Um, in the past, I'd be free forming those composites, right? Well, now I've got a scan on them from their last visit. So I 3D print the model, can make a putty matrix, and then I can basically rebuild their teeth in composite exactly how they were before they broke them. Really cool. Would never be able to do that if I didn't have all these scans on patients throughout their journey through my practice.
Is there anything else about, having the archive data that surprised you or come in handy like that?
Yeah, for sure. So like I had a patient this week who broke a tooth, has a partial.
Mhm.
In the old days, it'd be like, I don't know, what am I going to send the lab the partial for a few days so they can wax up the crown or whatever? Like, no, it's like I just sent the lab the scan from 6 months ago. Hey, this is tooth number 3. Tooth 3 broke, but it's an abutment for the partial. Here's what the tooth was like before it broke. The day they came in, the tooth was already broken, so I couldn't do a scan of it then to do a pre-treatment scan to match back because the tooth was already broken. So I had the outline of the scan from last week or from last month, 6 months ago, whatever. Sent that to the lab. They were able to duplicate that with exocad, doing like a biocopy basically. Milled out a crown that was the exact same shape and contour of their tooth before, so the partial just slides right in. This makes all those things way easier when you have that long-term data on patients.
And you just keep scanning every time they come in.
We scan most adult patients once a year. So what we like to do is we like to line up to where they're either getting a scan or radiographs in their visit. Only at one visit are they getting both, and that's their new patient visit. They get both a scan and X-rays, but otherwise it alternates from there. So scan, X-ray, scan, X-ray, scan, X-ray throughout their hygiene recall appointments.
Gotcha. But you do keep it basically an annual record of them, and that way
Absolutely, yeah,
situations like this arise or anything else unforeseen, you have something you can fall back on and reference,
absolutely.
and as you said before, you can monitor the movement of the teeth as well to see
Or wear or gum
or where
resection.
exactly.
Yeah. And show them, and that's a nice thing, I can show them, like, "Hey, look at your gums here 2 years ago, look at your gums today, see how they've changed, we gotta do something about this or it's gonna get worse," right? And then they can see it, they can own the problem at that point because they see it with their eyes. They don't notice it because they look at their gums every day, if they do, maybe they don't, but
Nobody sees the grass grow.
exactly, that's exactly what it is, that's exactly what it is. So, it's just a great tool for all of these things, it's really amazing how much you can do with this data. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to getting patients educated so that they say yes. Educated patients say yes. The bottom line, that's what it is.
Where would you say would be a good place for your regular GP to dive into this so that he can start educating his patients on this and incorporating some of these techniques into his practice?
Yeah, start scanning new patients. That's where it starts. Start scanning your new patients, and then slowly add in your recall patients as time allows and as you get more used to it. That's really it. Just take your next 10 new patients, scan them with your scanner, and just see if they say yes to treatment more than the people that you don't scan. And it's going to be yes. And once you see that, it's like game over. You want to scan everybody, and then the dynamic changes. But you got to get your team on board. And so, how do you eat an elephant? You you take bites, right? So start with new patients. That's the low hanging fruit. Those are the ones you need to try to maximize anyway. And that's the easiest to start with. Then once you do that, then it's easy to start throwing on your recall patients as time allows and as they come into the practice. So just start with your new patients.
That sounds like a great place to start. That's so exciting. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. Thank you guys. Like I said, we're a happy customer of Evolve, and there's literally not a day that goes by that we're not using exocad for something. Sometimes it's as easy as creating a model. Sometimes we're, got a patient who needs a bridge, who's missing a tooth, and want to make a nice provisional. So we, build the model with a ponic on it or whatever. Like sometimes it's silly stuff like that. Sometimes it's full smile design, all kinds of stuff. But having exocad in a practice has really become a really important tool for us. And so I thank you guys for being involved with Diana Tadros's courses and getting my wife set up with our whole exocad setup. So it really does make a huge difference in the workflow of the practice.
It's such a powerful tool, and we appreciate you being a part of this. It's very exciting.
I'm just a paying customer, man, right? And happy to do it because it really does. You look at like an exocad purchase, and it's not inexpensive, but you guys do offer a lot. I've never heard of anybody that you can just jump on with a designer, schedule on their Calendly link or whatever, and get on and have them help you design something. The support is amazing. You guys remoted it and set everything up. It was super duper easy. But it's an investment that pays off. And if you're catching all this intraoral data and you have the tool like exocad, that really makes the to where you can do things that you never imagined you could do, and you can do them quickly. And then add on the 3D printer from there, whichever 3D printing workflow you have. Um, the missing key is the design in the middle, right? And so you guys have a whole number of options and suites of solutions for that. So I just appreciate you guys being a progressive voice in the world of digital dentistry and bringing digital dentistry to everyday dental practices like mine. It's appreciated.
We appreciate you being a part of it. It brings it down to bringing better care to the patients, connecting with the people who, at the end of the day, are receiving the treatments, who are the whole reason that we're doing any of this, right? Is we're trying to bring better restorations, better treatments, less invasive treatments if possible.
Yeah, and more predictable.
More predictable. Absolutely. And you said you've incorporated 3D printing in your practice as well?
Yeah, we have a couple 3D printers that we're running. So we have a SprintRay Midas, so we can print restorations pretty quickly. It's about 10 minutes for a crown, 5 minutes or so for an inlay or an onlay, 7 minutes for a veneer. We have a Pro 2 where we can print models, night guards, surgical guides, shells, things like that, bridges, all that kind of stuff. So we're using them kind of for long-term provisionals, the restorations we do, or like the inlay instead of a composite, inlay or a big, four surface composite. We'll print a composite onlay using the Midas. I would love to see some more evolution in the materials that are available for printing restorations and have them add some more strength and wear capabilities and all that. But we'll get there. We're early on in that journey of these 3D printed materials. It'll only get better. But again, like if I don't have a design, I can't print a restoration, right? So like the design is the missing link in the middle. People have scanners, people have printers. The exocad in the middle is what makes the two work, right?
Absolutely. What good is a canvas without a paintbrush, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. I guess you could be Jackson Pollock and just use your hands, but that gets messy.
Not if you're trying to match 8 and 9.
Yeah, you can't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that.
And speaking of places to start, where can people find your courses? Where can they find you online?
Yeah, so if you're interested in the Mullis Coaching Fusion course, go to mulliscoaching.com. There is a tab that says live courses. I think Fusion is the second one listed. That's a great thing if you're looking at really growing that ortho-restorative part of your practice, incorporating ortho with restorative dentistry to get better outcomes for patients and be more conservative. You can always check my Instagram at Joshua Austin DDS. And then I do a lot of courses with Invisalign. And so a lot of times I'll come to a local area and, do a study club. I do a lot of Seattle study clubs. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. And I don't know if I'm breaking news or I don't know if I should say this, but let me just say it this way. I just joined the faculty of a major restorative education center slash platform that many of the people may know. And there will be some announcements about that coming forward. So watch my Instagram for that. But hold on, I got to just education. Sorry, I got that.
Bless you.
That should be coming soon. So there will be about 8 or 10 courses a year at this education center that may or may not be in Scottsdale, Arizona, where you could come learn ortho-restorative, intraoral scanning with the iTero Lumina, and how to maximize that for restorative scanning and for consultation purposes and for records and all that stuff. So lots of places to find me.
That's so exciting, man. Wow, it sounds like you're really on the edge of all this, though, and it's really cool to hear voices from who are both teaching and in the real world, putting these practices to use with real patients in real time.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you everyone else for watching. This has been the Evolution of Dental podcast. Remember to look for us on all the podcast platforms. Remember to like, subscribe, share the show with your friends, and never stop evolving.